Today is day 10 of the Karen Read trial. I'm doing part 2. I'm also painting my daughter's nails right now, so just bear with me. The next witness today is Kevin O'Hara, and he works for the Mass State Police on the CERT team, which is kind of like a search and rescue team. They also coordinate like crowd control at Gillette Stadium for large events. But he was originally called to 34 Fairview in order to search for a couple different items in the lawn. So originally there was a courtesy call from Tully, who let them know that they needed to respond to 34 Fairview. He was just saying, like, we don't have the approval for you guys to do the search yet, but start digging out your cars, get all your equipment ready because of the snowstorm. It was going to take a little while, and start putting together a team who can respond to this. And originally he had 8 people that he was asking to respond, and 7 were only able to come in. He sent out the alert to his team at 3:48 p.m. and he left his house at 4:13 p.m. And then he gets there and he's briefed by Tully, and they finally have the green light. He arrived to 34 Fairview at 4:56 p.m. He was given info on the space to search from Tully based on the location of the body, the flagpole, and where the car was when they arrived, like when the ambulance arrived. So I'm guessing they meant like Carrie Roberts' vehicle. And they were looking for the missing shoe and taillight pieces. They started their search at 5:24 p.m. Remember that this is wintertime. It's totally dark out. They're using headlamps on their hands or on their heads. They're using shovels, and they had positioned their cruisers to shine the headlights from the cruisers onto the front lawn. He explains the whole process of how they're shoveling, how they are searching multiple times through the snow. It's kind of like a very detailed process, and they work in a line. They started with their backs to the driveway about halfway through the lawn, and then they were working towards the flagpole. So they found the first piece at 5:45 p.m. It was a piece of taillight, and the state police handled all of the logging of the evidence and the bagging of it. He says that it was his team just recovering the pieces, and then the other officers were doing all of the logging. Here's a picture of one of the pieces of taillight they found. In total, they found about 6 or 7 pieces of taillight, it says. They also found John O'Keefe's shoe, and it's really hard to see, but this is the berm or the curb area, and then his shoe is actually flush against that curb and filled with snow. Here's another angle of it, but there's always been a lot of controversy over this shoe not being the shoe that John O'Keefe was wearing because his shoe had a white sole. I think this is white. I think it's just reflecting from the berm, the black, but it is hard to tell. At some point, they called off the search. He spoke with Tully. Within a small area is where they had found all of the pieces. So he's saying, hey, it's 6:15. We can come back and do another search, but we've been searching for a little while now. We haven't found anything else. And so they called it off at 6:15. He did offer to return to search a different day, and he was never called back. The search team was never called back to search. Now we get into the cross-examination by Alan Jackson. He is highlighting that when O'Hara arrived on the scene, there was no other police presence there. Just one of his officers had arrived 2 minutes before him. So the scene was not secure, basically. It comes out that 1 minute before the phone call for the launch of the team, Tully was actually on the phone with Dighton PD, so he is saying, hey, we're going over, we need to go get this vehicle at Karen Read's father's house, and then he hung up, and then that's when he called the CERT team, O'Hara, to get working, like start shoveling out, get your crew together. This was the first time that his team has ever done an evidence search in really snowy conditions like this. They've done missing person searches in the snow, but they've never done an evidence search. Jackson is highlighting that, documentation is extremely important, and his team is not the one that did the documentation. It's the Mass State Police. I believe Yuri Buchanan and Michael Proctor were doing other investigation things. They were like at Karen Read's father's house, but there were Canton police officers there on the scene and maybe 2 Mass State Police officers. He does mention that An adult male exited the home in a hooded sweatshirt and asked if they were here regarding what happened earlier, and then went back inside. So there's nothing else really given on that, but we didn't hear about that last trial. But apparently Brian Albert comes out of the home and says, hey, are you guys here because of what happened earlier? And they say, yep, and he goes right back inside. It also comes out that all of the pieces were found in a clustered area less than 1 foot apart. So Alan Jackson holds up a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and says, about this area is where you found all of the pieces of the taillight, and he says yes. There is no official record of location of where the taillight pieces were found in the lawn, so we just don't know. And he says, do you know that 40 more pieces of taillight were found at later dates by other people? And he says, I wasn't aware right away, but I have been made aware of that. So now we have redirect by Hank Brennan. He's just kind of clarifying a little bit. Did you ever see anyone toss or place anything into the grid of the space where you were searching? And he says, there's an objection, but then the judge does allow, and he says, no. Did you ever see anyone go into the grid? He says no. Were there photographs, time and date stamped? And he says yes. But we just don't know where the location of those items are. And he does highlight that Trooper Proctor and Yuri Buchanan were never on scene that evening while the CERT team was there searching. And that's all for day 10. I'm going to start listening on day 11, and I'll have a daily recap for you tonight.